Hello, and welcome to this month's edition of Hempfield Happenings. I'm Austin Groft.
And I'm Danielle Leachy. This month, we'll be focusing on the topic of safety.
Our first group of stories focuses on the safety within our school district.
First, we will take a look at the precautions students and faculty have taken at the high school at their first ever Safety Day.
Next, the prevention of drug abuse instructed at elementary schools.
And the dangers of having an online presence.
Stay tuned for these stories and much more, for this is Hempfield Happenings.
And that is the best way that you can apply pressure, because you're not using just your arms, then you're using your entire body.
In recent months, school safety has been on the minds of many. High schools across the country are taking the initiative to keep the lives of their students safe in and out of the classroom. Here at Hempfield, administrators are doing just that.
22, 23, 24,
During Hempfield High School's first ever Day of Safety, students participated in stations consisting of first aid training, Stop the Bleed, ALICE training, and police and fire rescue education. The day then culminated in a school-wide lockdown drill.
Some of the teachers over the summer decided that they really wanted to increase safety education for the students, and they started to put together a sketch plan, and then we sat down and talked through what all we could do, and it just continued to grow and expand into this huge, amazing event that we have today.
Trainings such as Hempfield Safety Day have quickly become the new normal. Approximately 4,200 school districts nationwide have implemented ALICE, or Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate active shooter training. Emergency personnel argue that education is the best way to prepare students in the event of an intruder.
I think that's one of the big things, is not being afraid to talk about that bad things can occur and what to do, and get kids in the mindset of how to react to those situations.
Well, I think it's important just to get everybody on the same page for safety. Years ago, they didn't really think about it. But with everything that's going on in today's society, I think they're more focused on getting everyone educated on safety issues.
And while education and discussion could potentially better prepare students in the case of an emergency, these discussions have revealed a harsh reality for many students. According to a Pew Research Center survey, 57% of students say they fear an attack on their school.
Today, more than ever, we live in a pretty dangerous society. There's a lot of radical people out there. And so I don't know if I'll ever feel 100% safe in a school, but I definitely think that Hempfield is taking reasonable steps to ensure that safety as much as one can.
And while the guarantee of safety in high schools may never be completely restored, schools like Hempfield will continue to educate students in the hopes of creating environments in which they can grow, learn, and survive. For Hempfield Happenings, I'm Katie Yoder. Emergency safety is not the only tough issue that schools are tackling. Maddie Olson explains the importance of drug safety education.
Now it's time to get drug-free and clean!
According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, over 72,000 people have died from drug-related deaths in 2017. Schools around the country are taking a stand against drugs to keep their students safe before it's too late. In Mountville Elementary School, teachers are finding more unconventional ways to teach drug awareness.
Mother Goose isn't a great big horrible friend. Drugs have invaded her land and they're easy to get.
Mrs. Carpenter, a teacher at Mountville, puts together a play about the dangers of drugs every year for the entire school. This only adds to the drug curriculum the school already has.
So we learned a little bit about the drugs that students may encounter in their lives and some statistics, and we talked a little bit about vaping, and we talked about alcohol use. And I know through PE they're doing an opioid lesson right now.
Everyone at the play got to participate. Participation also came into play during Red Ribbon Week at Landisville Primary Center. As one of their teachers explains,
down here at the elementary school, it was a whole week focused on drug prevention. So we had different days of dress, and there were different announcements made throughout the school. So at the elementary school, it was something that we really took on and embraced, similar to what we do at the high school.
Mr. Tani is also one of the health teachers at Hempfield High School that educates the students about standing against drugs.
We're not only informing our kids, but we're also giving them the skills that if they get involved in a situation where something like this comes up, they can say no.
Saying no is a lesson that each student has found their own reasons for, inside and outside of the classroom.
Like just starting with weed and thinking that that's a cool drug to do can get all the way to heroin and cocaine, and then you become an addict and there's no way to stop.
Everywhere you went, pretty much where I used to live, you could see people like using, and like you could see them when they were not using and then when they were using, and they were just like, it was just two different people. I've seen it affect so many people that I don't really want it to affect me like that.
The high school even brought in police officers and a paramedic to further inform the students.
Just creating those connections where students are able to have those open conversations with those community members instead of viewing, that police officer as someone that you only go to if you're in trouble. It's actually a great resource to have, and we can communicate with them and talk with them and create those connections.
Our reason for being here is to educate you guys so that you guys can make the right choices in life.
Through Hempfield's many efforts to teach drug awareness, they have been able to maintain one of their main priorities, their students' safety.
Last thing I want to have to do is be the medic that shows up to treat one of you guys and have to make a phone call I don't want to make.
For Hempfield Happenings, I'm Maddie Olson.
When you communicate on your phone, then that should be private from your parents. How many would say yes?
Computer tablets, one of the latest technologies that are shaping how schools function. With more students online, cyber safety is at higher risk. Here, at Landisville Middle School, faculty is ensuring that students are protected while they're on the internet.
We tell them to take screenshots and bring that information to us. We teach them to be quick and accurate reporters. If things happen outside the school day, those situations are taken up with the local police.
The school also brought in a special visitor to share her view on the matter.
You have your privacy controls in place on your Instagram. They can still sell your stuff because they have a license to your stuff.
I think that if you as a parent have real concerns about the behavior of your child, then monitoring is called for, but there does need to be a certain level of trust if it's warranted as well. I don't think that we talk enough as adults with our kids about this place.
Poor choices made by students online can still affect them down the road.
There are a significant number of employers that will do a basic Google search on an individual before they decide whether or not they're going to interview them.
Cyber safety is not safe. It's not private. Anything that you put out there is going to be permanent. And kids need to understand that and make better choices about what they're putting out there.
Landisville Middle School hopes that their students heed their advice while on the internet. But remember, even adults can fall victim to the click of a button. For Hempfield Happenings, I'm Ethan Miller.
From the safety within our school district to the safety of the individual.
Bella developed a touching story on a former student who has had depression.
That you hear at night, it's not someone who's seen the light. It's a cold and it's unbroken. Hallelujah.
Mental illness is not always an easy topic to discuss or experience. And while these struggles may seem invisible, they can make life difficult in the classroom, in the office, and even doing everyday tasks. And did you know, approximately 1 in 5 Americans experience some sort of mental illness?
I would say I see students almost every day, different students that have anxiety or stress that they're really having trouble coping with. Some who maybe it has spun into depression.
Twin sisters Sarah and Liz Beerley understand these struggles better than anyone. When Sarah was diagnosed with depression in 3rd grade, both girls' lives were greatly affected.
At
the end of October this year, I wound up in a hospital for a period of 8 days. I actually made a suicide attempt. My dad had called me around 1:45, and to get that phone call and to hear that your sister didn't want to live anymore. And I've been waiting for that call for 10 years, but it didn't help to get that. And it just felt like everything shifted. Like everything, I had finally thought we were past the point where I was going to get that call. I finally thought that there was hope and that we were moving on and that it was going to be okay.
Sarah's story shows that anyone can be affected by depression, even those who seem to have it all together.
In high school, I was homecoming queen. I was very well liked, and I didn't feel that way. But you have a very skewed perception of yourself and the world around you when you are struggling.
Fewer than 50% of people living with depression actually receive treatment.
What's really scary is because you guys are great at masking how you feel, it is sometimes hard to tell, and sometimes there are no warning signs or are no signs that are visible.
I wish people would acknowledge that mental illness is just as severe as physical illness. It can be incapacitating, and someone isn't not trying everything. When a family gets a diagnosis that someone they love has depression, it doesn't just affect that person. That's the person living with it, but everybody around them is now suddenly floundering, going, what do we do? What are our next steps? Living with a mental illness, I have a lot of chronic physical illnesses, and nothing is as painful as battling your own brain. The hardest thing to do is wake up in the morning and have no idea how you're going to get through the next hour, let alone the day. As much as family members struggle, I don't want to make it sound like a burden, because I think burden is a word that's used a lot with mental illness, of like, it's such a burden for them to live with, it's such a burden for you to have to live with them. I don't have to live with Sarah, I don't have to be her sister, I get to. Mental illness may seem invisible, but we are not.
If you or someone you know is struggling, don't be afraid to get the help you need. From Hempfield Happenings, this is Bella Schwalm. Mental illness is not the only safety concern when it comes to brain health. Ben explains the danger of concussions and their lasting effects.
Dance, come on, boom. Too slow.
According to Statista, youth football participation has been dropping throughout the decade, falling from 8.4 million in 2006 to just 5.2 million in 2017. One of the main reasons for this is concussions, but youth organizations across the country are finding new ways to help eliminate the risk. One of the most dangerous parts of football is tackling, especially if it is done incorrectly. Youth coach Matt Clements explains what he often sees done wrong.
The impact is more direct on the neck and head area rather than on the shoulder and chest area. Naturally, keeping your head up has you hitting with your shoulder and chest, where lowering your head gets the head and neck involved in the hit.
One way coaches have helped correct this is through a new form of tackling. The technique was popularized by Rocky Soto, a former coach for the Seattle Seahawks.
It's a technique that eliminates injury risk, if it's done the proper way, and it eliminates head-to-head contact. The shoulder tackling technique focuses on keeping your eyes up, hitting with your shoulder, and driving through with your legs to avoid neck and back injuries.
Despite this new technique, concussions can still happen. Caution is a powerful tool to combat brain injuries.
It always is a good idea to just get it kind of checked out, looked over, especially if you have some kind of medical staff at your school or wherever you are.
The thought of concussions can be scary for many people, but as awareness of them grows, the risk is lowered. For Hempfield Happenings, I'm Ben Marinas. From tackling on the football field to tackling a current heated debate, here's Orion Jones with a story on sexual education.
Right, so today and this week and next week, we're going to be committing ourselves to focusing on what you can control and letting go of what you cannot.
Sex and reproductive health. How should it be taught in schools? Should it be discussed in schools? How should the federal and state government allocate money to various techniques and programs? This is a topic which has not received much buzz in the media or discussion in government, but is a topic that needs to be addressed.
Dr. Kara Jones and Ms. Linda Miller spoke of the benefits and drawbacks of various reproductive health education methods.
It is imperative that students receive education on both their physical reproductive health as well as how to use the appropriate methods to be safe for sex and contraception.
And in 1993, the World Health Organization basically created documentation and collected data that abstinence-only education doesn't really help to identify with protecting against STDs and HIV.
The National Institute of Health came out with a study in 2009 which looked at abstinence-only education. The idea being to sort of only give education on abstinence until marriage, and it is correlated with an increase in teen pregnancy rates and sexually transmitted diseases. It not only does not decrease teen pregnancy rates, it is likely and been associated with an increase in it.
Hempfield's Health and Physical Education Department Supervisor Dr. Mark Ashley described the current curriculum here at Hempfield.
We feel comfortable with the approach we're taking now because we think it's the best thing for our students to have all the information available to make sure it's being taught from a certified health educator. And then we do challenge them to have conversations with their parents and to really think through the information that they're given to evaluate for themselves what they think is best.
I've been here 30 years, and when I first came, it was abstinence-only education, and that's what was taught here. Hempfield adopted and approved comprehensive sex ed to include a broad-based curriculum that incorporates the prevention of disease and illness related to relationships, interpersonal communication, and risk factors.
So the health education curriculum is actually dictated by the state standards of Pennsylvania. So the Department of Education has standards that are evaluated at grade 3 and grade 6, and then again at the high school level, grade 9 and grade 12. And so we need to be able to hit each of those key components of the state standards at each one of those grade levels. And so as it relates to health education, we address all the state standards in our curriculum, and then those things need to be, when they're revised or edited, they need to be taken before the school board, because the local school board has some say as to the way those standards are addressed as well. So it's a combination of state, federal, and the local Board of Education.
Senator Ryan Ament of the 36th Senatorial District discussed the issue of abstinence-only education versus comprehensive sex education in Harrisburg.
That specific debate between abstinence-only sexual education or safe sex education, that has been, and again, I think it's appropriate that that be left to local communities, families and school districts, local school districts to make that determination, because it may be that there's not sort of a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to sexual health education, and that varying communities, different communities across the Commonwealth may have different needs and may also certainly have different views. And I think that's best reflected by local decision making.
As the issue of safe sex in schools remains stagnant, I wish to remind the viewer that if you want to show your support or you seek change, contact your local congressman. For Hempfield Happenings, I'm Ryan Jones.
Our next group of stories focuses on our community.
Lauren Ager investigates on the risks of elderly driving.
As you age, driving can become a challenge not only to your physical stability, but mental as well.
Officer Marks has been working on the streets of Hempfield for many years. With some of the vehicular accidents that he has encountered, he addresses that age is a huge factor in the degrading of physical and mental faculties.
As we grow older, our bodies start to wear out. They don't last forever. So things like eyesight starts to diminish. Reaction times might increase. I see something dangerous ahead of me and I can't react as quickly.
According to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, 18 states require older drivers to renew their driver's license more often than the rest of the state's residents.
With some of those crashes, when it was believed that the driver's age had an impact, maybe causing that crash or having at least some partial responsibility for that crash. In Pennsylvania, as a police officer, if that's my belief, I have the ability to resubmit that person for a physical exam.
Different medical conditions like arthritis and crippling inflammation of the joints that derive from aging increase elderly drivers' chances of getting into accidents.
What we'll do is we'll do a basic skill assessment,
And some of the criteria that we look for is we want to make sure basic motor skills are functioning.
John's Driving School is a full-service school for not only the youth, but for adults and elders. They provide classes for new drivers or for those who would like to refresh themselves on the safety of driving.
We also do things and try and explain new technology in vehicles, which I think is extremely important, because there's so many features in cars today that didn't exist 10 years ago, even 5 years ago.
In 2015, senior drivers who often are impaired by their vision, motor function, and cognition were estimated to have caused 14 million accidents with Americans aged 18 to 64.
Well, I think with elderly driving, oftentimes reflexes and sometimes fear, because they don't drive quite as much. So oftentimes trying to help quell that fear and really setting them up for success. And how we try to do that is driving them in areas where they're comfortable first and foremost.
I don't go far anymore. I just take the routes I know and make the little short trips. Because once you lose your license, you're really, it takes your independence away.
For a long time, these folks were 100% independent. And now that independence is, in some instances, being challenged. So we have to be cognizant of that as well.
It is very risky. And some of the people have lost their licenses because they should, or their family takes it from them. They say, Mom or Dad, you should not be on the road. And I think we have to be very aware of that.
We do get quite a few seniors, especially when there are family members a bit concerned about driving and they need a third opinion. They'll consult with us and we'll come in and do a senior consultation to figure out how well they're driving.
Recognizing the physical and mental changes in your driving ability can be hard. But with awareness of your abilities, you can continue to drive without feeling like you're in danger of a collision. For Hempfield Happenings, I'm Lauren Egger. Driving isn't the only transportation that can be hazardous. With a story on increasing walking safety, here's Colson on crossing guards.
Crossing guards across the nation are helping young students get to school safely. But here at East Petersburg Elementary School in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, there's talk about removing the guards. I talked to parents, teachers, and a crossing guard to get their thoughts on the matter.
Robert Hill explains how he found himself guarding the streets of East Petersburg.
Well, I retired from Millersville, and I got lonely at high school, so I decided to look in the paper, and I seen this job, and I've been sitting here ever since, going on 13 years.
In May 2017, there were over 75,000 active crossing guards nationwide. Of these, 17% of crossing guards are stationed at elementary or secondary schools. I asked Robert how he felt about the aspect of working with children.
Wonderful. I like kids because, like I said, I was down there in school for 30 years, and I've been around kids. And I love kids.
The care and passion Robert shows towards his job has clearly resonated with the East Petersburg community.
But everybody's friendly now, and a lot of parents came to my aids and told me, one guy that lived up the street, he told me if I have any trouble, let him know. But I didn't have no trouble.
I have kids at the high school and a graduate, so I've known Bob for as long as I've been in East Petersburg. Great crossing guard, cares a lot about the students.
Rumors have surfaced on the possible removal of the crossing guard, which, if confirmed, will have a profound impact on the community.
I would not let my child walk to school if there's no crossing guard.
I would be very upset because I'm a paramedic EMS professional and the safety of the kids depends on those crossing guards. I've seen people speed through school zones posted at 15. It's scary. I don't want to see them removed.
I attempted to contact the East Petersburg Borough to get information on the possible removal of the crossing guard, but the borough gave no comment. Although their future is uncertain, the presence of crossing guards such as Robert have left their marks in areas nationwide.
Crossing guards play a pivotal role in the safety of students everywhere.
Hempfield Happiness.
I'm Colson Hunt.
Many students walk to school, but not many fly a plane to get to their classes. Now here's Abby with information about how to stay safe on an airplane.
The way people get around has evolved in many ways, especially long-distance travel. From railroads to cars to now what's above us, airplanes.
There are two types of aviation, commercial and general. Commercial flights are used for transporting a large amount of passengers or cargo on a scheduled basis. General is mainly used for business executives who choose to fly in private planes for reasons of convenience, privacy, and security. To many of the public, flying seems to be something that isn't trusted.
I know planes are generally meant to be safe, but I would feel unsafe during the entire ride.
Like when I see plane crashes in movies, it makes me even more scared. Like the way I see it is, if the plane goes down, there's no way of getting out of that.
Air accidents occasionally happen, but in reality, they are very rare. Out of 35 million commercial global flights in 2017, only 2 ended in accidents resulting in fatalities, according to TO70, an aviation consulting firm. While non-commercial aviation offers many advantages, they are significantly more dangerous than commercial air travel.
Safety never ends with aviation. There's not a moment in the flight where we're not thinking about safety. So there's a captain and a first officer in the airplane. During the flight, we have one person checking over the other person, make sure they're not making a mistake or making sure that they're keeping safety in mind always, because we're human and we make mistakes. So that's one of the safety nets that's built into aviation from an experience standpoint that the public should take comfort in. Is, you know, you're not flying with someone fresh off the streets.
The risk can be mitigated as much as you possibly can by being a good pilot, by being safety oriented and being safety conscious. And you do everything in your power to make that happen. You check the weather, you check your reference charts, you check your navigation aids, check the radio, you check other pilots, and you check the aircraft itself. And every good pilot is going to do that consistently and thoroughly every time they go flying.
The key to a good, safe flight is a good pre-flight.
It takes an average of 20 minutes for a professional flyer to check over everything in either planes, including fuel, wings, ignition, flaps, and much more. It is very important that each pilot flying checks every single step before takeoff. Although planes seem scary, they're actually one of the safest means of transportation and have been designed to keep working even if things go wrong. From Hempfield Happenings, I'm Abby Minnick. Now back to Austin and Danielle for the closing of our show.
I think this really brought together the focus of our show.
It was great to see numerous aspects of safety throughout, such as what motives were taken at the Safety Day held at the high school,
how aging affects the physical and mental ability of elderly drivers,
and as well as the risks of having an online presence.
This concludes this month's show all about safety. Thanks for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for next month's episode. For Hempfield Happenings, I'm Danielle Leachy.
And I'm Austin Groft.